And I had to, guys, if you're just joining us, Sabrina didn't even know what wake and bake was, and I sounded like a junkie trying to explain it to her.
Wake and bake.
And then you wake up and you smoke weed, which is legal. You bake your brain, which didn't sound good. It doesn't sound good, right?
No.
Okay, so
baking your brains.
Yeah, definitely doesn't
it's
sound
like frying your brain.
How do you want your brain? You're fried, baked, steamed, maybe a little sauté?
I don't know.
Anyway, yeah, so we'll get Will on to talk about the rules and regs that have been finalized by the Cannabis Control Board. But first, let's go to the Zoom feed where Attorney General Leevin Camacho is standing by. AG, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Sabrina.
Good morning. Do you know what wake and bake is?
I do not. No, I'm.
See, I'm not alone.
I'll disclose. I've never smoked cannabis or ingested cannabis, so I hear that I missed out on a lot growing up. But that's a true story. So
wow.
And it's not the Clinton I didn't inhale. I legitimately have not. Yeah. So.
Well, there you go.
Needless to say, I was not one of the cool kids growing up.
Oh, I guess I'm surrounded by squares in here, but
no, I have tried it, but I'm not like in tune with like wake and bake and shake and whatever. I've tried it, but I've never, you know, I'm not like a weekend double fisting type of person.
You ever grill and chill?
What?
No.
I just made that up. Anyway, all right, so awkward pause here before we move in.
No idea what you're talking about.
Top story, AG Camacho's never ingested weed ever.
Hey.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, definitely. Just because it's legal don't mean you got to do it, guys.
Exactly.
AG, so we wanted to get you on because we haven't spoke to you since back when our show was called Containing COVID. So we wanted to just get you on. We'll give you the floor, and then we'll shoot some questions at you. Just what's the latest with the Attorney General's office that the people of Guam need to know about?
Well, you know, we've been pretty busy, Chris. So I guess recently we've had a few things. We released that opinion saying that settlement agreements are public records and should be produced after the case is settled. And that was in response to the OPA dealing with some settlement agreements at the Port Authority of Guam. So that was a few weeks ago. We had our first Castle Doctrine case that we dismissed homicide charges based on findings and great work by Guam Police Department officers going out and finding out what had happened. So those are two things that had happened just a few weeks ago. Grand juries have now started up again. So I don't think people realize that although we've had pandemic since March, our criminal cases have been tracking pretty closely to last year. So, and to give you an idea, we charged about 340 felony cases through June 24th of this year. And last year we hit that mark on June 10. So we were only about 10 days off from when we had charged out about 340 felony cases. And the same thing for misdemeanor cases. We were only trailing by about a week or two. So unfortunately, crime has continued through the pandemic, and our prosecutors have been working through this, basically reporting every day to charge things out. As you noticed, we had a trial last week that completed. We had a guilty verdict in a murder trial. We'll be starting up trials as the court accommodates or can accommodate more and more safe spaces for jurors. So I believe there's a rape case that is starting, a rape trial that is resuming this week, and there's another homicide trial that's set to start either this week or next. So things are ramping up pretty quickly for our prosecution division.
How key was that guilty verdict in the Acosta case, AG?
What was that, Chris? I'm sorry?
How key was that guilty verdict for you guys? That's something that a lot of people wanted to see.
Yeah, you know, it's, I don't think, Chris, people realize that. So last year, we actually went to trial 42 times. And the rapes, the murders, we're going to go to trial. The violent crimes, there's going to be a lot of trials. So we were on track to actually surpass that this year. So it's a huge, you know, I think we want to make sure that folks who are out committing these really atrocious crimes are going to be held accountable. I know we're not at the sentencing phase yet, but, you know, our office does take those crimes extremely seriously. And those are the ones you are going to see us taking to trial. It's going to be interesting as the court navigates, because we haven't really set up a space for social distancing with 12 jurors and alternates or even 6 jurors. So I know the court is really working overtime to make sure that we're able to resume trials as quickly as we can. But I believe before arraignments started about 2 weeks ago, we had 450 felony defendants that were awaiting arraignment. So even if we're talking, you know, 5% of those that go to trial, there's going to be trials for the foreseeable future. And the murders, the rapes, so those are the ones that we definitely are going to make sure that the defendants are held accountable.
AG, if you could, in a way that you can, tell us some more about this dismissal of the case with the Castle Doctrine, because that's something that people were following closely too.
Yeah, it's so I know that it just so happened that there was a bill that was introduced to kind of expand Castle Doctrine and make it apply in public places. But when you see an application of the Castle Doctrine to these facts, basically you are presumed when you're in your home that anyone who is trying to forcefully enter your home or unlawfully trying to enter your home is doing so with an intent to hurt you or to kill you. So you were authorized at that point to use deadly force. So after GPD went out, they did a very thorough investigation. They gave us reports, and based on those findings, we were required under the Castle Doctrine to dismiss the homicide charges. And that's just that's the way the law is written.
Right. We had a comment here, AG. Please ask the status about the appeals from the gaming business about the court ruling issued earlier this year.
Right. So I think that deals with the Gerald Cruz matter, the Pugwa case. And that was a very, I'm not sure if you recall, Chris and Sabrina, where the judge had dismissed, basically saying there's no less cruel way to kill a dog than shooting it. This is a case involving someone going to, I don't know, for whatever reason, my village, Jigo, has these animal abuse cases. I'm hoping that we can put a stop to that. But, so he shot these animals, or a Pugwa, he shot a dog, and I believe he had shot a cat too. And the judge dismissed it, saying that if you kill if you seriously injure it, it's a felony. But if you kill it, it's not a felony; it's a misdemeanor offense. So that appeal is now pending before the Supreme Court of Guam. I know that they've been declining to have oral arguments in certain cases. So I don't believe that matter has been set for hearing yet. But we did challenge it, and we are arguing that shooting a dog is causing serious physical injury to it and should be a felony offense.
AG, they're asking, I'm thankful for that update, the status of the appeals from the gaming businesses.
Gaming. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I thought you said gain.
No problem.
I know, I was confused.
Okay.
Hey, well, now we got an update on that too, so.
There's 1 week is like it's like 7 weeks, and I guess I should say AG life, right? So the gaming decision, that there was a hearing last week, and the gaming rooms are asking to be able to operate basically in contravention of the law while their appeal is pending. Judge Barcinas held earlier in March that the rules and regs that they were using to justify issuing licenses for particular gaming machines, and I can get into more detail, were not passed properly because there was no public notice, and basically no one's quite sure how these got to the legislature and how they got passed. So he said that they're invalid, and under the law at this point, it would be a crime to operate or to possess these machines. So the gaming rooms are asking for additional time to operate until the Supreme Court of Guam hears that. And we've opposed it. We basically said, the legislature has made a policy decision that it's a crime to operate and to run these machines, and they shouldn't be allowed to engage in criminal conduct any longer while this appeal is going forward. So that hearing took place last week. Judge Barcinas heard it. He's going to issue a decision. If he denies the stay, then they'll have the opportunity to bring it before the Supreme Court of Guam and ask the Supreme Court to intervene and to allow them to continue operating.
So as it stands right now, these game rooms, these 24-hour game rooms that we see that open are supposed to be closed.
So Sabrina, this is where, we have a court decision from, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago. And if you look at our laws, there are certain machines that are expressly authorized to be operated. And these are, I think, dog and horse racing machines.
Right.
So although there's a general gambling machines or gaming machines are illegal, there are these specific machines that have been carved out. So I haven't been into, I go to Crown Bakery, and I know there's a gaming room next door, and I see, it's wild to see how many people are there at 6:30 in the morning. But I haven't gone in to see what machines are operating.
And they're all really, really, really drinking up their coffee. It kind of looks like they might be shooting it up. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we're talking about the Liberty machines. Right. Did you say? Are the Liberty machines legal?
I have to, again, I don't know them by name.
Oh, okay.
I can tell you which ones the laws expressly say are authorized, which would be, from my understanding, the horse and dog racing machines. And I know there was some questions about that.
There's like a track.
There is a specific law that says those can be operated.
Right. And so that's why
those are the only machines.
AG, people are wondering, oh, they're supposed to be closed, so we keep getting calls like, oh, the game rooms are open, but they're open because they're using only specific machines that are still, for whatever legal loophole, legal.
That's correct, Chris. Right. Yeah, and I don't know, it's very precise. Those machines were authorized.
Well, it sounds like they had some people writing some laws that.
Right. Did the AG's office submit testimony on Bill 226, I believe?
Right.
They just had a public hearing on that last week. Yeah. There was a lot of emotional testimony.
Right. You know, we try to stay in our lane as much as we can, Sabrina, and, you know, policy is really where the legislature can that's what they're there to do. So I know that Vice Speaker has been a very strong opponent of any kind of gambling when it comes to these types of machines, and I believe her law would close that loophole.
Yeah.
You talk about the way that these things are all connected and violent crime, and you just see, and Chris, you were talking about cannabis too, and having cash on base. You know, if you want to see what happens when you have cash on site, you can look at what are the businesses that are often targeted for violent crimes, and it's going to be game rooms because they have cash on site. So, I'll say that much, I guess, Sabrina.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. That I almost feel like if we do away with the horse and the dog, then next thing you know, there's going to be a chicken racing one, and it almost seems like as soon as we close a loophole, they come out with something else that's outside anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, and when you read through the filings, I'm not sure if you saw them, but they talked about it's like $1 million plus that they're generating in profit or taxes, and it's like. It's not as though you're selling a product, right? You're selling the thrill of gambling, and to have that much money, even if you're generating that as revenue, you know, that's profit, right? So there's a lot of money that's being spent, unfortunately, and it's, you know, you have folks right now that are really struggling. I know that right now they're going to lift the moratorium on evictions. I think they had 30 days from the last executive order. So, you know, we're going to get into some very desperate times now, and you just would hope that the priority would be on using money for essentials, shelter, food. But again, you go and you drive by these game rooms now, and you'll see quite a number of vehicles once we hit PCOR 3 that are out there.
You know, there was something, and I don't know if this is something that the AG's office has seen in terms of an increase in fentanyl. Is that you said fentanyl abuse,
fentanyl.
Opioid crisis going on? Are you seeing a lot of cases involving these sorts of narcotics?
And then also, AG, if you could kind of add on to that, the status of that, because I know we're on at least one opioid class action, right? So go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, I've heard some chatter about fentanyl and seeing an uptick in that. This is where we really need to get our toxicology reports from the medical examiner's office and also GMH, so that we can confirm whether or not we're seeing an uptick in those substances specifically. Our office has been involved in the opioid. We have a few cases going on with the opioid matters, and that's proceeding. The Purdue matter is proceeding in bankruptcy, and I think we just had a status hearing on that, and that is proceeding. But, you know, I think opioids right now, I know that there are some efforts to improve the prescription drug monitoring program, which is also meant to curb abuse and prescription drug abuse. It's just one of those things where it's kind of laid below the radar because ICE is such a big deal here in our largest drug problem. But, you know, I'm glad to see that there's more attention being given to opioids and the danger that it poses here.
You mentioned toxicology reports. Where are we with almost with a medical examiner, one that can officially be hired for Guam? I know it's kind of like a crazy question to ask considering the climate we're living in these days.
Yeah, we had a postmortem commission meeting a few weeks ago. We did have one qualified applicant that we are set to contact, but it's really just a matter of across the country there's a shortage of forensic pathologists. I would say, I'm going to really say that we're in a good position with the two we've contracted out of Hawaii that have been out here, pretty regularly, and have come out, I'd say, within a week or two after we've needed their services to perform an autopsy for the most part. So we're doing what we can with the situation that we're put in, but it's just across the country. It's very hard to get forensic pathologist anywhere.
So is that just going to be the way I mean, it's going to be for the foreseeable future, AG, is that we're just going to continue to have these guys flying in and out and I guess, make the most of it?
I hope not, Chris. I hope that we get an applicant that's willing to move out here and to provide forensic pathology services. But as of right now, I think we've had only one qualified applicant in the since I've been in office. So in the last year and a half, we've only had one person who has a forensic pathology certification that submitted their application.
AG, could you maybe speak to what kind of places this put us in terms of the role of an ME, obviously examining bodies for signs of foul play? Like, are we still in a good place having to wait for these guys to fly in, or this might be an oversimplification, but are people getting away with murder?
No, we've been pretty solid, Chris. And again, so many of the services that our office provides, I like to compare it to stage lighting, where you only notice it when things don't go right. So when the medical examiner's office is coordinating and working with GPD to get our forensic pathologists out here in a week, it's not going to make the news, right? So I can say that since we've secured the services of the 2 forensic pathologists out of Hawaii, a week or 2 is typically the time frame that we're looking at. And I think one time it was even within days that they were able to fly out and to perform an autopsy. So we've been very fortunate. And I would say we haven't had any cases that we've been unable to prosecute because of that. And in fact, Dr. Ishikawa, one of the forensic pathologists, actually flew out for the Acosta trial and testified as part of that. I think his testimony was pretty critical in terms of the injury sustained.
AG, when you spoke about toxicology reports, do we not have those, or is there an issue with that? And how would we be able to get stats on any overdoses or anything with fentanyl?
Yeah, so my understanding is we are performing toxicology reports, but the amount of detail that you would need to really assess the amount of drugs, the level of drugs, the specific types of drugs, might need more advanced testing. So we would potentially have to request advanced testing for cases that we believe if there is a specific substance that was involved, or a specific substance for a cause of death.
Right.
So when you mentioned fentanyl, I don't know if the toxicology reports that we're running now would be able to distinguish between the different types of opioids, I guess.
And as other jurisdictions are dealing with this, and it's much worse, thank God. God, I don't want to say thank God, but it's much worse in other areas. But obviously, I'm thinking that those types of tests are maybe the norm in those other areas. So are we doing anything, or do we have an inventory of those types of more stringent tests on hand?
I know that's what the prescription drug monitoring program is supposed to do, and public health. This is one of those things too where it's good to have ideas, but if you don't fund a lot of these control measures, they're not going to work. Mm-hmm. So I do think it's important to be able to keep a track and a handle on the number of opioid prescriptions, and then be able to flag folks. Interestingly, one of the things that we're looking at, so opioid prescriptions, I believe, have to be paper. They have to be written out, and they cannot be, by our laws, sent electronically for some reason. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that we were looking at and potentially suggesting to make it easier to track, so you can't forge a signature, which many jurisdictions have already gone to. But then for e-prescriptions, there's a cost associated with that and getting everyone over to that. So as we continue to modernize, I think you're going to see our control efforts increase. It's like in high school where you find the absent form and you just take one from your teacher and you can excuse absences, right? We want to make sure we're avoiding that when it comes to prescription drugs.
Mm-hmm. Leevin, I wanted to switch gears because there's a story that we are working on regarding criminal sexual conduct against involving a high-ranking individual in law enforcement. And could you just tell us, what is the statute of limitations on criminal sexual conduct charges or rape?
I'm sorry, Sabrina, I can't really hear, it might be my mic. I can't really hear you that well.
What is the statute of limitations on criminal sexual conduct complaints, rape?
Okay, for CSC, it's going to depend because we did have a statute, and it's going to depend. It's going to be a very fact-specific review of what the allegations are, Sabrina. So I can't really give you a blanket answer. 3 years for most felonies. Rape cases, there have been several laws, so it's going to depend on what year the the incident occurred, what type of incident we're talking about. Is it force? Is it touch?
I see.
So I can't really give you a general answer.
Okay. All right. That's fine. I just wondered if there is a statute of limitations.
Right. Okay. And it says it's scaled. AG, is that what you're saying, depending on... Well,
our laws have changed, and just depending on the reporting requirements. I would just say any felony crime right now, any felony, the statute of limitations is 3 years. And so that's a good... If it's happened in the last 3 years, you are going to be squarely within the statute of limitations for any kind of felony crime. But once you go beyond that, it's going to be very fact-specific. I think that the rape laws changed for statute of limitations in the... early 2010s. I don't know how you refer to, 2012, 2013. So then that also changed things as well. So it is really going to depend on the specific allegations. Okay. But last 3 years, you're squarely within statute of limitations. Anything beyond that, it's going to be a little bit more complicated.
Okay. Real quickly then, I guess I'll just ask you about the Department of Labor. They're seeing this surge of people trying to defraud the system. The Department of Administration, Mr. Edward Byrne, mentioned that he'd also seen some fraudulent activity, intentional. He's not quite sure. What is the AG's office doing to, I guess, crack down on fraud with COVID?
So we're going to let Department of Labor kind of work through, and my understanding is that jurisdictions all across the country are also dealing with this. I think Washington was hit really bad. Hawaii, same thing happened. So once they're able to figure out if there is criminal conduct, I believe they're going to refer it to either our office or the U.S. Attorney's Office if these are federal funds. So there would be two potential avenues to go for criminal prosecution.
Okay.
AG, is it, since it's with the poo and the UPUG, if it's federal funds,
that would be federal,
right? Does your office even get involved, or?
Yeah, it's going to be, well, I mean, they just have to. It's going to start with their investigation, and if they believe it rises to criminal conduct, then it's going to be a referral out for prosecution at that point. So we'll kind of wait until they've sorted that out. I know their priority as of right now is to get these benefits out and to not delay any longer. So I don't think that they'll probably flag these cases and investigate, but I'm not sure if they're going to be spending a bunch of resources investigating right now when we have folks that are waiting for their unemployment benefits.
By any chance, if you had an opportunity to look at Senator Sabina Perez's new bill related to changing the Emergency Health Powers Act, specifically how it deals with procurement?
I haven't really, I know I saw it pop into my inbox, but I haven't had a chance to really look through the bill itself.
Okay.
AG, I guess in closing, if you didn't have anything else, Sabrina? You talked about evictions and how we're going to be heading into some really difficult waters in the near future. If people are facing those types of situations and they want to make sure that the whole process is on the up and up, is there a division in the AG's office that maybe they could reach out to and ask?
Our consumer protection division, actually, Chris, has been very involved. I say in the last 30 to 45 days, Deputy Fred Nishihara and I think Attorney Ben, I just know him as Ben, they've been actually fielding calls from tenants and landlords. So they do have some information at our consumer protection division, and their email address is consumerprotection@oagguam.org. Our information, our phone numbers are also available on our website, but I know that I popped in last week, and they're actually receiving calls from landlords now who want to make sure that if they are moving forward with an eviction, that they're not violating the law. So I think it's just important for us to put out there that you can't just go and change the locks. And now I'll tell you, Chris, we heard maybe about a month and a half ago about a family who went out to buy groceries, came home, and their locks were changed. Just like that, the landlord came in. So our investigators and our attorneys were able to go and to make calls and to try to tell the landlord, you can't do that. That's not the proper way, especially when there's a moratorium on eviction. So, anything that we can do to put out there that, yes, you have to pay rent, but, that kind of situation where you go out and you come back home and you can't get your stuff.
How are you?
And they're threatening to call the police on you.
Sorry, AG, were you guys able to resolve that did they let them back in, or?
I think that, you know, we always tell them you're going to be liable potentially. You guys need to work it out. If the tenant is willing to move out, at least allow them to get their stuff and to coordinate that. So I know that our office has intervened in at least 2 or 3 where the landlord has kind of allowed the tenant to the appropriate amount of time to gather their belongings and to move out or to come up with some kind of agreement. So they've been very active, and you know, again, that's kind of the good work that they've been doing that doesn't make the headlines necessarily, but it's very important work for those families that they've kept the roof over their heads even temporarily.
Well, it sounds like we want to get somebody from the Consumer Protection Division on a show maybe this week, AG. If we could, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk. I know Ben is very excited about this because you know, the CARES Act also has protections for those who have any federally assisted rent or mortgages. So for foreclosures, there's also a moratorium as well. But I can work with Carlina and coordinating that.
I'll reach out. Yeah, that sounds really good. That's a lot of good information to get out there. Thank you, AG.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Oh, wait, Chris, can I just plug?
Yes.
We are putting out a bunch of videos on Criminal Justice 101. So we've put it out on our Twitter page, Instagram, and just explaining to people, you know, kind of from the first appearance to the grand jury. I think arraignment is the next piece. You know, we get so many people frustrated with the criminal justice system who don't understand kind of how it works. I mean, you know, one very good example is we have only 48 hours to charge out a case after a defendant's been arrested. So if someone is arrested at 11 a.m. and Maddie's are at 3 p.m., you know, our prosecutors may only have an hour or two to get a single shot to indict. Now that the grand juries have started up again, you know, that's going to be a little bit, we're going to have more opportunities, but I just want to plug the tech while I'm on here with Zoom.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Have Carlina send over the videos too.
Right.
Okay. I'll make sure we get that over to you guys.
Thank you, AG.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Okay, wash your hands. AG Leevin Camacho, 9:35. We'll take a short break and